Welcome to the Becoming Your Best Version podcast. I am your host, Maria Leonard Olson. I'm a civil litigation attorney in Washington, D.C., an author, podcaster, TEDx speaker, and journalist. You can learn more about me at marialeonardolson.com. And if you would hit the like button on my TED Talk, I would really appreciate it. I'm getting ready to do another TED Talk, and everyone always asks you about your numbers when they are considering you as a speaker or as an author, so that would be super helpful. And to join my mailing list. They also ask how many people are on your mailing list, so I would love it if you join my mailing list. And I started this podcast 5 years ago because my work with women in midlife brought me into contact with really inspiring women who have inspired me and I think will inspire you. So today we're going to talk about anger. We have Bronwyn Schweigerdt, a licensed psychotherapist and anger expert. She helps her clients and podcast listeners come back to life through integrating with their inner child, dislodging shame, and healing their relationship with anger. Her podcast is called Angry at the Right Things. Instead of fixing people's messes, Bronwyn's goal is to elicit feelings people are most ashamed to have, such as hatred and rage. She knows that even though feelings are invisible, they don't evaporate, but store away in our bodies until processed. According to Bronwyn, these feelings haunt us and cause mental and physical illness until we express them into words with someone who can hear and validate them. She especially loves playing midwife in this way, helping her clients and now her podcast listeners externalize painful feelings once and for all. She has experienced success in helping people break free of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, even psychosis, by reconnecting them to their anger and healing their relationship with anger and with themselves. You can learn more and follow her at angryattherighttthings.com, and all the social media links are in the show notes. Welcome, Bronwyn.
Thank you, Maria.
How did you become an anger expert?
Yeah, I didn't start out with that objective at all. And in fact, I did not go looking to become a licensed psychotherapist either, for that matter. I was happy with my first career, but as life throws your way, and you know about this, I watched your TED Talk. I myself fell into a very, very severe depressive episode. And I went looking for a good therapist. I sat on many couches with many different therapists. And every time I thought to myself, Bronwyn, you are hardly functioning right now, but I still think you would make a better therapist than this person you're working with. And so part of my healing journey from that depressive episode was going back to school, getting my 3,000 hours, and that was one severe depressive episode. I had another one just like a year or two later that lasted longer. It was very pernicious. And in retrospect, when I actually was able to start working again and I'm connecting with my clients, I started connecting the dots between my own depressive episodes, what I'm hearing from them about their anxious episodes, their depressed episodes, their manic episodes, their, psychosis, their OCD, and all the somatic stuff like the headaches, the gastrointestinal disorders, the vertigo, the insomnia, the autoimmune disorders. And what I found the common denominator is our suppressed anger. So
Mm,
that's what made me an anger expert, because I realized if we could stop suppressing it, stop dissociating from it, if we could connect to it and say, hey, it's not bad to feel angry. Actually, I'm just going to let myself feel this right here in my chest. That's where it usually shows up. And say, hey, anger, what do you need right now? Do you need to have a boundary? Do you need to have an assertive, communication with this person or some accountability? What do you need? I'm going to be responsible for you. I'm not going to dissociate from you. I'm not going to shame you and say, you're bad. I'm not going to talk myself out of you and say, it's fine. I'm fine. I'm going to do right by you, and I'm going to channel you out of my body into productive ways like boundaries and assertiveness. And if we can learn to do that for ourselves, we heal ourselves, we heal our relationship with ourselves, and we're not getting sick physically and mentally.
I completely believe that. Do you subscribe to the teachings in The Body Keeps a Score, that book?
Absolutely. Yes. And anger often shows up, like I said, in our chest, but a lot of us disassociate from it. And so it doesn't show up. It shows up more as headaches. And it's funny, we dissociate from our body into our head and we say, no, 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 or we try to, figure out a solution before we feel the anger. And so we get headaches in that respect. And then shame shows up in the gut. That's one thing I'm really seeing. But when we dissociate from that shame, it actually shows up in the lower back. It's kind of like dissociating from the front of us to the very back of that part of the body. And so, yeah, it's crazy how much the body is always speaking to us.
Yes, I went through a period where I felt like nobody close to me could hear me and my throat hurt. I could feel it here. In working with a somatic healer, I was able to channel that. So,
Hmm.
um, how does one, you've begun to talk about it, but how does one process anger in a healthy way?
Yeah. So before we can get to that stage, first we need to really heal our relationship with our anger. And so that is one by starting to see anger as like the light on our emotional engine or dashboard rather. Instead of something bad, instead of something to just move on and pretend like it's not there, to see it as a warning light. And if we had our car, dashboard blinking at us, we wouldn't say, "Oh, it's fine. The engine's probably just fine." We would pay attention because we know that the goal is to repair whatever is wrong and find out more. And so if we could see anger in the same light as this is here to give me wisdom. This is not a bother. This is not an annoyance. This is here to communicate something very important to me. So that's step one. And then I would say step two, a lot of us, our relationship with anger started in very early childhood before we have explicit memory. I believe most of us, it started during what we call the terrible twos. And so we don't have, explicit memory of that. And our parents didn't know how important it was to validate our anger when we had boundaries for the first time ever as a 1.5, 2 year old who said, "No, mommy, I do it," and our parents didn't know what to do with that. And so they shamed us, or maybe they gave us silent treatment, and we felt like, oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned. And I can't afford that because I'm only 2 years old and I depend on this attachment figure. And so a lot of us created this template in our brain that said, oh, okay, my anger or my boundaries equals abandonment or equals shame, right? And rejection. And so that template will live on in us and it will determine our relationship with anger for the rest of our lives until we wake up and say, oh my God, I need to do something about this. I need to fix this because it's actually very healthy to have anger. And I need to unlearn this distortion that I learned as a child.
That's so interesting. So some of the ways after you go through those steps might be somatic healing and traditional therapy.
So I have come up with what I call an integration exercise. It's really simple. This is a big part of why I do my podcast because I want to get these principles out to everyone, not just my clients. And so, an integration exercise is when, let's say, you're triggered in the present. We all get triggered. And instead of seeing those triggers as something, just derogatory or painful, we can start to see them as opportunities to integrate with our early childhood self or our inner child. So I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, I got in a fight with my, young adult daughter because she didn't want to talk with me. She just didn't feel like talking. And my trigger has always been I cannot handle silence in the presence needs of other people. And so I was expecting her to help me with that. And she didn't feel like it, which, you know what? That's her, that's her decision. It's her home. She doesn't have to talk to me if she doesn't want to. But I got angry with her and this whole thing happened. So a couple hours later, I sat down and I said, "What just happened? I need to understand why I'm so triggered by silence that I can't, even allow my daughter to be in my presence without talking to me." And I allowed myself to just imagine, I closed my eyes and imagine what it felt like to be in the room with her, but she's not talking to me. And I felt this sensation in my gut. That's shame, right? And so what we do is we just keep our eyes closed, we feel that sensation, and then we let our minds float back to the first time we ever remember feeling that same sensation. And that is what I call an imprinting memory. And so I floated right back to 3-year-old little Bronwyn, who was with her mother, and her mother is never making eye contact, never talking to her, never listening to her. And I felt very rejected and shamed. Children always feel shame with a parent because we don't have the objectivity as children to say, my mom's actually depressed and this isn't a me problem. Children always conclude it's a me problem. I'm lacking. I'm not worthy of her attention, right? So it took me right back to 3-year-old little Bronwyn. And what I did is I just imagined my adult self going to her, getting down on her level, looking her in the eyes, and saying, "Little Bronwyn, I see how ashamed you feel, and I know why. It does hurt when our mom never, engages with us at all. But I need you to see what I see now, that her failure to connect with you is not a reflection of you whatsoever. It is 100% a reflection of her own deficiency. And so we're going to put all that shame you feel in this big cardboard box, and we're going to give it back to her and say, here you go, mom. Turns out this was never mine. I'm going to return to owner. This belongs to you, not me." And so we can do those things for ourselves where we integrate with our inner child, where we start to attune to ourselves and say, you know what, little Bronwyn, you matter to me. Maybe you don't matter to mom, but you matter to me. And I will validate your feelings. I will listen to what you have to say. And I will be that consistent attachment figure who will meet your needs from here on out. And that is how we heal our relationship with our inner child. So, those are some principles that I like everyone to employ.
Well, you mentioned it a little bit, but tell us more about your podcast.
Mm. Yeah, I cover all these things, a lot of inner child work, a lot of shame, a lot of talk about shame, a lot of, discussion about hatred and what hatred is. Maybe we could talk about that right now, but that's a highly solicited topic because in our culture we have this taboo around that word hate. It's almost like the worst word.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because we don't want to acknowledge or admit that we might feel hatred. But hatred is actually the same as disgust, and it also lives in our gut. And, I tell people that when let's say you're walking with a young child down the road and they see roadkill and they go, ew, icky. You don't go, that's not icky. Don't say that. You don't talk them out of that response or that reaction because it's good. It's there to give them wisdom, that disgust at the roadkill. And so when we feel hatred, when we can embrace that and say, okay, I know you're there to tell me to stay away from this person because they're not safe. And I don't need to shame myself. I don't need to judge this feeling. It's there for my well being, right?
Yeah, really interesting. So, was it hard for you to start a podcast?
No, it was actually, I find it very cathartic because I have so much to say, but as a therapist, I'm doing a lot of listening. So I get to finally, kind of articulate everything.
Do you release new podcasts weekly, or how often do you do?
Yeah, usually once a week. Hmm.
Okay. I see on your website you have the hidden impact of shame as an episode in breaking down anger. Um, are those the most popular topics covered on your? podcast?
Those are popular. The hatred episode I have, which is much older, is very popular. Also, very popular is codependency. I think a lot of my listeners are probably in the codependent spectrum.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's an important topic to cover. A lot of us are, especially women in general, tend to be pretty codependent.
What are some ways that you can break out of a codependency cycle?
Yeah, connecting with your anger. How's that?
Mm.
Because that's the one thing codependents don't do very well.
Yeah.
And so because we'll talk ourselves, well, I will say, so the way I define codependency is just simply someone who feels responsible for other people's feelings. And when we feel responsible for others' feelings, we cannot simultaneously be responsible for our own. It's a choice. It's either or.
Mm.
And so what I like to talk about is we are responsible to others, but never for others.
Mm.
And so we are responsible for our feelings and our behaviors. So once we do that, once we can connect with our anger and be responsible for us, but still be responsible to others, we become free people. We become powerful people.
Yes, I agree. So, what does your daughter, you mentioned a daughter, what does
Yeah.
your daughter or your family think about your work in this area of anger?
Yeah, my husband has had to kind of adapt. I'm sure you can imagine. I mean, so he's adapted a lot because if you recall, I was very depressed for a long period of time. And when you're depressed, there's no anger, there's no feelings.
Yeah.
Depression isn't a feeling. It's not sad, it's just nothingness, you know. And so I was just so dissociative for a long, long time. And then I finally started coming back alive and connecting with my anger. And then he's like, "Who is this person?" And
Mhm.
then I'm angry at him and I'm like, being assertive with him. He's like, but yeah, he's been good with it. But yes, a lot of adaptation, I would say.
And how about your daughter?
I think she has responded the best. And I will tell you the coolest story. So she's 21 now. Um, so she felt very abandoned by me when she was 5 years old. Did she ever tell me that? No, because 5-year-olds don't have the capacity to tell their parents these things. But that is when I fell into my first depressive episode. And, if you are around someone who is, severely depressed, they're alive in body, but that's about it. So she didn't understand what was going on. She just felt very abandoned by me. Actually, she was very emotionally abandoned by me. And she just knew that mom wasn't making eye contact anymore. Mom, seemed like she didn't care. And so she had a lot of shame from that. And our relationship took a very downward turn from that point until just 2 years ago when she was 19. So for about 14 years, we were just not getting along. And a couple of years ago, I realized what first took our relationship down this bad path. And I wrote her a letter called Dear 5-Year-Old Edie, where I apologized to her 5-year-old self for that emotional abandonment. And I said, I was depressed, but I need you to see that you were emotionally abandoned, but the shame that you felt as a result of that belongs to me, not you. That is not a reflection of you. That was 100% a reflection of my own defectiveness at that time. And after she read that, something shifted so profoundly in her. And she had had chronic headaches and stomach aches almost daily for those 14 years between age 5 and 19. And they completely stopped that, like the day she read that letter, and her anxiety completely diminished. So it healed our relationship, but it also healed her within herself. It was so powerful. So I just want to encourage anyone out there that when we are able to dislodge shame for ourselves or in relationship with our children, do that for them, it heals us. It gives us back our lives.
Wow, that's really powerful. Gosh. I
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, um, can you give us an example without betraying client or patient privilege of how working with you has helped a person get through a tough time?
absolutely. I do have a client who allows me to share about her experience. I do change her name, so I'll call her Kelly.
Mhm.
But she has been with me now for goodness, probably 2.5 years. And when she first came to me, she had psychosis. And in particular, she suffered from hallucinations. And people, a lot of mental health care providers don't know how to work with someone with that level of illness. Um, for some reason, I wasn't intimidated. And, she had what her hallucinations were was of evil witches or like dementors from Harry Potter that suck your soul. And I just, listened to her. She shared about her life with me. And one day I said, it seems like those hallucinations you have are actually reflections that your brain wants you to see about your mother and who she really is. And she's like, oh my God, I think you're right. And so she was able to cut off at long last, her relationship with her mother. That was about 2 years ago. And she has had no more hallucinations ever since. So I just want to say that mental illness is a way of our body speaking to us. It's saying, you know, listen, see these hallucinations, see these images. I'm telling you, stay away from this person. Or, from my own experience, I had insomnia for about 30 years. And I I didn't know what was causing it. I tried everything under the sun to fix it and nothing worked. Every kind of, over the counter drug, pharmaceutical, everything. And finally, when I started connecting to my anger, allowing myself to feel angry with my father and then holding him accountable for his abusiveness throughout my whole life, giving him ultimatum. You know what? Either you own this and you apologize and you become a safe person, or we can no longer have a relationship. When I did all that, I started sleeping like a baby. And that was about 4 years ago. I was able to discontinue my meds. I now sleep like a baby. So that insomnia was my inner child saying, Bronwyn, wake up. You are betraying us. Do right by us. So our bodies are always trying to communicate. Our mental illness is a way of trying to wake us up.
Yeah, wow, that is powerful. I also noticed one of your episodes about how love is the antidote to killing shame.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I like to see it as, the people who are most monstrous. So let's say my dad in this case, I see that what makes him a monster is his own shame because people with the most shame who are in denial of their shame, they deflect it onto everyone around them. And so he does that. And I would rather see shame as the true enemy than the person themselves because those people as dangerous or unsafe as they're also believing a lie because they believe that they are shameful and they can't tolerate that. But the truth is, humans are humans. We're all free to be human and make mistakes. That doesn't make us shameful. We're all allowed to make mistakes and do better and do right by people and make amends. But when we don't allow ourselves to be fully human, that makes us into a monster. So, yeah, that's really when we can love ourselves and dislodge that shame and live in reality. That's really what I'm trying to get to.
Wow, you do some powerful work that can really help a lot of people. I encourage you all to check out her Angry at the Right Things podcast. You're based in San Luis Obispo or somewhere
No,
else?
I'm in Sacramento, California.
Okay, well, San Luis Obispo has always intrigued me because it's a blue zone and was named as the happiest place in the US. Would you concur with that designation?
I mean, I grew up there and I certainly didn't have the happiest experience growing up. So it depends on the family you grew up in, no matter where you live, I suppose.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm sure that's the case, but as a generally is the community pretty connected? Does it feel like a good place for someone to live?
It's not a diverse place, I will say
Ah,
that. Yeah, it's
interesting.
it's got a great climate though, and if you love the beach, it's got all that going on and some
Yeah.
pretty mountains. It's a beautiful environment, and it is a pretty safe place, to live
Mhm.
overall.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that I have anger. I also know that I've done a lot of work about trying to
Mm,
integrate the anger. Can't say
mm,
I'm perfect and I can't say there's not work to be done. So I'm definitely going
right.
to listen to Angry at the Right Things. And you've given me some things to think about, like to journal about and to perhaps write
Mm,
letters to my kids about certain things
mm,
that happened in my life and when I wasn't my best self.
sure.
And I too have had two major depression episodes.
Mm,
I don't even know if they remember them, but they probably do on some level.
mm.
So I thank you for all of that because you've really given me some helpful things to work on. So for all of my guests, I ask the following question, and I've never gotten the same answer. What do you do, Bronwyn, to become your best version?
Yeah, so it's work, but I will say the payoff is tremendous. I see it as being integrated. And when I say that, I mean always feeling our feelings as well as the logic, because feelings are not logical. And that integrating those two things is work. It's just effort, I will say. And integrating my mind with my body. What am I feeling in my body? Let's not dissociate into my head and forget about my body. Integrating the present with the past. Little Bronwyn, what does she feel? I know what I feel as adult Bronwyn, but what does she feel? So if we can really move towards integrating those things, that makes us whole. I mean, that's what an integral number is. It's a whole number. And we become integrated people who are whole, healed, healthy. And in addition, we thrive. And when we think about a tree that flourishes, we're talking about this tree that provides shelter, shade, refuge, and even fruit to thousands of critters. And so a flourishing human makes the whole world a better, safer place.
Oh, that's so true. We can't change other people, but we can change ourselves, and the ripple effect can be very wide.
Yeah.
And stopping cycles within our families,
Mhm.
destructive cycles, is really important. And I really believe I've worked hard on that. So I really thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast, especially since you have your own where you could talk about all this. And I would encourage all of you listening to go to angryattherightthings.com and follow Bronwyn on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. All of these, again, are in the show notes. She's got some really important wisdom to share with us that will improve our lives. So, again, thank you for not keeping all of this gift you have secret and sharing it with the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for having me.